All eyes were now on Fosbury. All his life he was an average athlete, and now he was there, facing a challenge that no Olympian had ever overcome, and he was the last man standing. He was there to prove one thing. He could do it. No matter how, he would clear that bar. Unlike many other record-breaking athletes, Richard Douglas Fosbury wasn't a child prodigy. Far from it. He'd always loved sports ever since he was a child. He just wasn't very good at them. He tried and failed to get into the school's football team. Then he thought he'd have a shot at basketball, seeing as he was tall, but no luck there either. So he tried athletics and found that even if he wasn't great at it, there was a spark for him there. After trying his hand on a few disciplines, he liked high jump the most. And don't get me wrong, he was no high jump star back then, but at least he wasn't completely useless. He was average. And just to give you an idea of how average he was, one time in college, he was challenged to clear a leather chair. Oh, come on, that's easy money, he thought. All he had to do was jump higher than a chair, which is not very high at all. He accepted the challenge, and not only did he lose the bet, but he also broke his hand in the crash landing. So yeah, he was pretty average. But this would never discourage Fosbury. Even though he knew he wasn't the best, he never gave up his calling. He was there to prove one thing. He could do it. No matter how, he would clear that bar. Throughout history, many high jump techniques have made their way to professional athletics. From an intuitive jump without run-up to a more sophisticated and awkward Eastern cutoff. When Fosbury's was introduced to the sport in 1963, specifically two techniques dominated the high jump sphere. The scissor jump, where the athlete cleared the bar with one leg after the other and landed on their feet, and the straddle, where they would launch their body over the bar, facing down and land on their side. Fosbury was trained with both these methods, and he did okay, but he was also warned about their limitations. So when he decided to take the sport more seriously, his coach encouraged him to try the Western roll, a more sophisticated jump that required the athlete to roll on their side and land face down. The Western roll, however, was no luck for Fosbury, whose best attempt was 60 centimetres, or 23.6 inches lower than the world record at the time, which was pretty significant in a sport where just a few centimetres could spell the difference between a gold medal or nothing at all. So even using the best known technique, he was far from being impressive. But where most would lose their faith and come to terms with the fact that high jump just isn't for them, Fosbury's persistence prevailed. He kept on trying and failing until he realised that he wasn't the problem, but it was the way he was jumping that needed to be changed. He needed to think outside the box, so he developed a new technique. After much experimentation, Fosbury found that by leaping backwards, lifting his hips and making his shoulders dip over the bar, he could jump 15 centimetres higher than he previously could. What a breakthrough! An astonishing result for him, though not so much for everyone else. It looked so strange, coaches started wondering if he was breaking any rules, but he wasn't. Technically, you can jump over the bar any way you want to, as long as you take off on one foot. He was good to go, but that wouldn't spare him the ridicule. One critic commented that Fosbury went over the bar like a guy being pushed out of the window of a 30-story building. Others called him the world's laziest high jumper, and one headline read, "Fosbury flops over the bar," giving the technique the not-so-flattering name, the Fosbury Flop. No one would take it seriously. Even his coach believed his technique was a shortcut to mediocrity and that Fosbury would do much better if he continued to work on his Western roll, and that he would never achieve anything with the flop. But soon he'd have to reconsider when Fosbury shattered the school record a few months later. That's when he started taking Fosbury's new technique more seriously. Over the next few years, Fosbury perfected the flop, and it was clearly working for him, but still, no one else seemed to be convinced by it. By 1968, at the age of 21, Fosbury qualified for the Olympic Games in Mexico, and even then, he was just treated as the odd one out. Now, the stakes were high. The competition started at 2 meters, and every round, the bar was raised a little. The first casualty came at the third raise of the bar, after a Yugoslavian athlete failed to clear the hurdle 3 times in a row. Fosbury never failed once. At first, the crowd noticed the weird flop and laughed, thinking he was more of a circus act rather than a serious competitor. But then, as he kept progressing, they started to cheer louder and louder for him. By the time the bar was raised for the 5th time, only 2 other athletes remained. A medal was certain. They all cleared the bar at their first attempt. But when it reached 2 meters 22, one was eliminated, leaving Fosbury with at least a silver already in his pocket. But then the bar got raised to 2 meters 24, an Olympic record. It was just him and his fellow US teammate, Ed Carruthers, left. The 2 men both failed twice, leaving only 1 chance each. Carruthers built up momentum in the run-up and took off. Moments felt like years as he leaped, reaching for that record. But it would prove too high for him as he bumped the pole and failed his last remaining attempt. All eyes were now on Fosbury. All his life he was an average athlete, and now he was there, facing a challenge that no Olympian had ever overcome, and he was the last man standing. 2 meters and 24 centimeters. He closed his fists, had one more look at the bar, took a run, and flopped over it. He did it. It was an Olympic record. While everyone had ridiculed him and tried to convince him to jump properly, the Fosbury Flop earned him an Olympic record. From that day onwards, other athletes started looking into the Fosbury Flop. Year after year, more adopted it seriously and refined it until it became the standard for every elite high jumper. It's easy to keep doing things the way they've always been done. It's much harder to go against the grain and try something different and new. While jumping high might sound like a trivial issue to some, look at everything around you. Every object, every idea, every concept wasn't born from doing things the right way, but rather through experimentation, failure, and finally, change. So if you have a dream and it looks way out of your reach, don't give up. Think outside the box. Keep trying and find new ways of reaching it. And with that, I hope one day you too can find yourself your own Fosbury Flop. We hope you enjoyed this video. As you might have noticed, we're quite a small channel and we'd love to see this project grow. So if you want to help us out, leave a like and a comment. It might not seem like much, but it really does work. And if you would like to see more, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. And we will see you all in our next video.